Hello, welcome to another PSC webinar. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from around the world. As many of you know, I am joining from Boulder, Colorado. And just to riff a little bit about the weather, we are having a crazy warm, dry November. And as someone who loves winter, I am very excited to hopefully get our first snow soon here in Colorado. But anyways, that's just top of mind for me because, I'm looking out the window here. But more importantly, welcome to our webinar today about tackling sustainability initiatives with regenerative agriculture. Our presenters today are with Anchor Ingredients, and Anchor has also sponsored our webinar, so thank you so much for the support. And then a shout out to WPA, the World Pet Association, for their sponsorship of our entire 2025 webinar series. We couldn't do it without your support, so thank you so much. A little bit about PSC, the Pet Sustainability Coalition, in case you are new here. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Allison Reeser. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Innovation here at PSC. So I'm part of a team of 11 of us that is working towards a vision of a sustainable future for pets, for people, and the planet. We are based out of Colorado, but we work with members worldwide. I think we're up to 18 countries now. And we also work with companies all along the supply chain in the pet product space. So essentially, if you are a retailer, a brand, a distributor, a supplier, you are welcome to join our coalition because a lot of the issues that we're tackling obviously cannot be solved by one company alone. Here's a little bit about how PSC works. One, we provide individual company to support along their own sustainability journey. But then, of course, two, we tackle those more collaborative industry-wide initiatives by facilitating collaboration and a bunch of fun stuff. And then when we say sustainability in the pet industry, a lot of times we're talking about ingredients, packaging, and responsible business. So in today's webinar, of course, we're going to be focusing on that ingredient side of things, which is such an exciting space. A few announcements before we really get started. We're gearing up for the Pet Summit. It's in March in Orlando, and the speaker submission application is still open. So if you would like to be on our stage, if you have a story to share about sustainability in the industry, please apply to that. It's still open. And the final announcement is for members only. So if you are a member with PSC already, our cohort application is also still live. This is honestly one of my favorite member benefits. These are small groups that are centered around a particular issue or topic. We have ingredients, packaging, but we also have sustainability leaders, sustainability newcomers, an executive cohort. I think I'm forgetting one, but anyways, if you would like to be part of a small group discussion that recurs throughout 2026, please apply to be in a cohort. And also, if you're like, I'm not a member, join us, and then you can join a cohort as well. A few quick Zoom housekeeping notes. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see the chat. If you want to just say hello, introduce yourself, comment on something cool that you heard for the rest of the attendees to read, use the chat. In the middle is the React button, and we're actually going to prompt you to use the React button at some point in the webinar. So if you want to go ahead and find that button now and give me a little reaction, that helps us know that you are listening to what we say. And then finally, and probably most importantly, the Q&A is where if you have a question that you would like our panelists or our speakers to answer at the end of the webinar, please drop it in the Q&A function because that's what I'm going to be looking at to ask them the questions at the end. All right. I think I got through all my announcements, and so I'm so excited to introduce our speakers today. So our goal today is really going to be how to evaluate a regenerative agriculture program, really focusing on crops. And that's really core to what Anchor Ingredients does. They're a premier specialty ingredient supplier for food and pet food ingredients worldwide, really focusing on quality, safety, and traceability. Anchor Ingredients has been a member with PSC since 2022, so you've been around for a while. So first up, we have Molly.kamrath, the Director of Business Integration and Improvement. She joined Anchor in 2018 and has led a bunch of different initiatives that connect people and process and technology. She's focused on supply chain traceability and transparency and sustainability. I know she's a key leader and champion of sustainability at the company. So I think she's just to list some more things, she's guided large scale technology integrations, such as a new ERP system. So welcome, Molly, to our webinar. And then next, we also have Shannah.Peterson, who is manager of special crop origination and cover crop sales. Um, she works directly with farmers to bring high quality specialty crops into the company's ingredient supply chain. And she joined Anchor in 2020 and has really focused on strengthening those grower partnerships and truly listening to the needs of producers. So, Shannah, thank you for the work that you do working directly with those growers. And thank you both so much for being here on a webinar. So I'm gonna actually stop screen sharing, and if you both want to come on screen as well and join me.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Thanks for
So
having us.
yeah, so happy to have you here. I'm going to go off screen, but I know you have some exciting slides to share with our audience.
We do. Let me pull these up and make sure we're ready to go. How's
Cool. Yeah.
that?
We see the presenter view, so I think if you swap, there we go. That's perfect.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, take it away.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that really kind introduction, both about Anchor and for the two of us. We appreciate that and for having us here today. And I guess before we dive into the topic at hand, what we wanted to start with was doing a quick pulse check to see where everyone who is joining us today is at kind of in their regenerative agriculture understanding or journey. So Alexander's going to bring up our first poll, should pop up on your screen. And then let me know if you're seeing that. Here we go. So your options on a very scientific basis are, would you rank yourself as, completely unfamiliar? You've maybe heard of the term once or twice, have a little bit of familiarity, or all the way on the high end, like you're a soil health expert and, have done this for many years. So we'll leave the poll open for a couple of, I don't know, 10, 20 seconds for everyone to respond, and then we'll kind of see where we're at. All right, looks like we have responses in. So, okay, so looks like everyone has at least some amount of familiarity, which is a great starting point. It kind of falls within that middle range. So, good, great. Thank you for sharing that. That's good, helps us kind of get a good start going. So, all right. So, first up, just a real brief introduction. Allison kind of hit on it, but Anchor Ingredients is a farm to food supply chain partner focused on delivering premium ingredients to both food and pet food industries. We've been around for about 10 years, and we're headquartered here in Fargo, North Dakota, which is where Shannah and I are today. We have 10 company-owned processing facilities that are located strategically across the Midwest. And whether it's crops that are grown, could be literally in our own backyards, to commodities that we procure from around the globe, Anchor provides a wide array of ingredients for both human and pet consumption. So in our business, and I'm guessing it's true for a lot of you as well, the ability to trace our ingredients back to the origin is critically important. Both, if we would have a customer complaint or, heaven forbid, in the event of a recall, it's just a critical function that we provide. And as a farm to food supply partner, we are uniquely positioned to do this. So beyond the basic, lot tracking, Anchor has taken supply chain traceability to the next level with AnchorTRACE, which is our proprietary technology platform that traces ingredients through every step of its journey. It looks all the way back to the farms that the product were grown on, including the, how it was grown and where, to logistics, moving the product from point A to B to C, and all the great processing activities that happen at our facilities. So with that as the background, like enough talking about us, our objective of being here today is to share with you our experiences, building out both the traceability and regenerative agriculture programs, so that when you leave today, hopefully you feel very well equipped to evaluate if a regen ag program might be a good fit for your organization, and something that would support your sustainability goals. So so Allison did a good job prepping that, using that React feature on the bottom, either raise a hands or whichever icon you choose, I guess. Let us know who in the audience either is part of a Regenerative program right now, maybe has done one in the past, or you're just considering doing it, any of the above. And it doesn't matter which seat you sit in. You could be a supplier, a brand, anywhere in the middle. So just throw a reaction out there and let's see how many we have. Okay, we got one coming up, two, couple slow. They float kind of slow. So, all right. Good. I like that feature. It's kind of a quick way to see where people are at. So, okay. So, in the past 10 years, as we've worked on our programs, we've identified 7 what we consider building blocks to become successful at them. The first couple focus on the why of defining why are you doing this to begin this? Why do you even want to consider regen egg? And then, as I mentioned, confirming that traceability is attainable within your supply chain. Just is a kind of table stakes for doing this. And then once those two are confirmed, we move into building the program. So first off, putting together a team of either internal or external team members who can help execute on these kind of programs, and then designing the details of how it would work. And once that's in place, then we move into more of an execution phase, which is shown on the bottom of the screen. So having you know, direct engagement with your growers, with your farmers, collecting high quality data that can be validated, and transparently reporting what the outcomes are after going through all the programs. So the next couple slides, we're going to dive into each one of these and explain how what they look like in practice. So first up is the why part of it. And in the different programs we've run or customers we've talked with, we've seen it kind of fall into one of these buckets. So, it could be a sustainable sourcing goal has been established by a company's, through their sustainability program or making commitments. And these can be great ways to demonstrate progress towards that. We've also seen brands look at regen egg programs as a way to support origin claims that they're making. And it actually takes it like a step further than origin to show that, the brand knows how the product is being grown, practices that are being used with it, as well as that the brand is taking the extra steps to be engaged with, at the farm level. The third one is probably no surprise to anybody, but that scope 3 emission reduction goals, again, may have been set at a corporate level. And whether it's a procurement team or a sustainability team is looking for, programs or levers that they can pull to show progress towards those goals. So, that's a common one. I would say one of the newer ones is that companies can consider these as a risk mitigation tool, because whether you're, a supplier or you're a brand, choosing to engage with growers who are taking on healthy soil practices can lead to a stronger supply chain and increase the resiliency, in case of drought or flood or things like that. And then finally, last but not least, would be a stakeholder driven motivation. So this could be your, investors in the organization, could be customers or other partners who have been asking you about emissions. And this is a clear way to respond to those. So again, on traceability, you might be wondering, why are we talking about traceability so much when I thought maybe this is, soil health and carbon? Well, the reason is you can't do one without the other. You can't influence changes in soil health without knowing who to go talk to. So, we have to have that traceability back to the farm. This can range in complexity depending on how your supply chain is set up. We feel fortunate here at Anchor that because of just the way that we're structured and our value proposition, that we have those grower relationships. We help manage logistics coming in and out, and we process at our own facilities. So that really allows us to build out this platform, but does take investments in technology to support that. And then the last one I included on traceability was that, if whatever seat you're sitting in, if you have relationships with the growers, that's great. That's a great start. If not, then the alternative is to find your upstream suppliers who do hold those relationships and that are a good fit with, what you defined in your objectives at the beginning, and engage with that. You're going to need to partner with them to help be talking with growers and run the whole thing. All right, so next step is getting your team together, and this will look different for every organization, but typically includes some mix of the following. So, an internal champion is preferably someone you have buy-in at the leadership level, really helps efficiencies and move things along. There's also other internal program contributors who can range from, I mean, basically any seat in the house. Could be procurement, sustainability, could be IT, finance, marketing is a big piece of it too. So getting that full cross-functional team involved is pretty important. And then kind of some obvious ones, growers. You need to find growers who either are, interested in the topic already of soil health, or who can would be willing to try new things out. Could be a supplier. Consultants, there's a whole array of, if you don't have the expertise in-house, finding someone who can help with, supply chain traceability, grower education. A big piece is third party verification of the data that you collect through the program. So that was, could be a lot of different hats. And then customers, if they're the ones who are driving the interest in the program, of who's a good fit there. So, okay, if you made it this far and you said, yep, we're interested, we can do traceability, we kind of got started on who's going to do this, then we need to flush out the nitty-gritty details of how the program will work. So the who I kind of mentioned on the prior slide. What we'll be thinking about, is there a certain recipe or product line that you have in mind for the program? And if you do, then taking it a step back to which ingredients are, primary in that recipe. And another step back of, once we know which crop or crops we're interested in, what kind of practices should we be encouraging with our growers? Because Shannah's going to explain later, this is not a one size fits all solution, that certain practices have more impact on one crop versus the other crop, or one geography versus the other, which is the where column coming up next. So figuring out those practices you want to include. And then finally, the incentives. So growers, some growers are already taking on these practices just for different, motivations, but some require some incentives. So there's different ways you can do that, but making sure you have messaging about what kind of incentive you're providing. In the when aspect, we think of in two ways. So first is the timing, which in the Regen Egg programs, we need to think about timing of growing seasons, so planting and harvesting, depending on what geography you're in. With contracting, if it's a customer who's buying the output, the finished product, as well as delivery, and how that all lines up or doesn't line up. Just think about all that. And then the second one piece is duration. So Shane will get a little bit more into the soil health practices that we talk about with our growers, but this, even if someone joins your program, if a grower joins your program and makes a change in year one, you're not necessarily going to see the result that year. So it's almost always a multi-year engagement on the part of all parties. And finally, the how is, do you want to assemble this program yourself and customize it, or would it be better to find a partner who maybe is already, has an established program, someone you could work with? And then, what kind of data are you going to collect and how are you going to obtain it? Shannah's going to give some great examples of that in a little bit. And the last question to consider, I would say, is, if given the objective of your program that you set at the very beginning, does the product need to be identity preserved like throughout the entire supply chain, or is it okay to use a mass balance approach, which, either one are acceptable, just needs to fit your needs. So after that, I wanted to share just a quick kind of case study of sorts. So here at Anchor, we've organized our programs in 3 buckets, as we're showing here. It all starts with traceability. All of them include traceability. On AnchorTRACE, we're focused on origin and attribute type claims. But then once a brand is ready to take kind of the next step, they're moving into either Anchor Regen, which is focused on the practices that these growers are incorporating and how that changes their soil, or one more step beyond that, we have called it Anchor Carbon, which is looking at not only the practices, but also the carbon outcomes that are being measured as a result of it. So both include identity preserved product that gets delivered to your door, but have varying levels of, data involvement. They both also We've in our program incorporated a third-party measurement reporting and verification partner, Regrow Ag, who we'll provide a link to in the chat, who helps provide that level, like added level of assurance for brands that the data that's coming in, has been reviewed and is substantial. Okay, so sorry, I probably advanced too quickly. That ends the part about designing what the program looks like. And now I'm going to turn it over to Shannah, who's going to walk through kind of once it's time to go out and meet with growers and start talking with them of what that requires.
Thank you so much, Molly. So when we talk about building these programs, the first thing we need to talk about is starting to engage with these growers. And to engage with them, you have to understand the levers that we have available within a regenerative ag program. And at the end of the day, it all starts with the growers and the soil. The soil is more than dirt. It's really a living ecosystem that drives plant health, carbon capture, and long-term farm resilience. Creating a healthy soil is really at the heart of every regenerative ag program. So these 5 core principles you see above are designed to prevent erosion, retain moisture, rebuild organic matter, enhance biodiversity, as well as restore critical ecosystem functions. They really work together to regenerate soil health, increase productivity over time, and lower the carbon footprint of agricultural production. And that's why we knew this is where the development of Anchor's program needed to start. So when we talk about engaging with the growers, we also need to talk about education. And not only grower education is important, but also education for anyone that's working on these programs. So our growers will span from a range of understanding and acceptance in the adoption of regenerative agricultural practices on their own farms. So there's various formats that you can use to incorporate soil health education with these producers and growers. One, you can do large group workshops. These will include classroom education as well as hands-on learning out in the field. And this is a great introduction for growers who are maybe new to regenerative agriculture, but also a great refresher for those who have been farming this way for many years. Another option we have is engaging one-on-one with these producers with regenerative agricultural experts. So these experts can really be in-house, or they can also be local agronomists to these guys' growing region. In the past, we at Anchor have utilized Understanding Ag for these one-on-one consults, and they seem to go over really well with our producers. The last option is really just providing pre-recorded trainings or invites to webinars like this one that may be useful to growers within their own operations. So the next step after you engage with these growers is you really have to figure out how you're going to gather your data. In any of these programs, outcomes are absolutely critical, and there's a few ways that you can go about collecting this data. There's publicly available tools such as life cycle assessment databases. These can be used for initial benchmarking for these growers. Here at Anchor, though, we have relationships with about 2,500 producers. So we utilize a couple of other ways. First, we use internal surveys. So we're collecting the grower practices straight from the growers. We made a fairly large financial investment to develop our AnchorTRACE app. So we utilize this as a tool to collect these surveys from growers, but we can also give them easy access to other things, such as our bid sheets or contract information. We also conduct on-farm site audits. So someone like me, a company representative, will go out to the farm and we can see these practices being utilized in real time. As well as our programs here have evolved, one thing we did learn was that brands place a high value on third-party verification. So we decided to partner with Regrow as our verification, reporting, and measurement partner. So for this, our growers will basically input their field and their practice data into Regrow Eggs platform, and then Regrow will verify the data and calculate the commodity emission factors using its proprietary soil carbon model. We use a variety of these things depending on which program we're running at the time. And finally, the last thing we're going to do is share the outcomes. We might share these outcomes with a variety of audiences, whether that's customers, growers, or even the public. And depending on who you share these outcomes with, you need to take into account design, layout, and how you show your outcomes. So for instance, say we want to share these with a grower, they're going to be most interested in their own outcomes. So these reports might include field level emissions data, regenerative tracking, things like that. On the customer side, our reports are probably going to show more outcomes as far as the regenerative ingredients that they may be interested in or that they're going to be buying. And if we want to put a report out to the public, we will probably show something like the impact that our programs are having on carbon emissions reductions. Overall, you really need to tailor your reports to whoever the audience is, while keeping in mind that it might take many different reports and many different versions of these reports that really show the same outcomes depending on your audience. Okay, so it's time for a check-in. I think they're going to put a poll up, but one of our questions were, what are the building blocks of a regenerative ag program? And I hope me and Molly did a good enough job explaining it. I'll leave that up for, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and I'm going to turn it back to Molly here, is we're going to talk about some of the lessons we have learned throughout this, throughout building this program, I guess. And looks like on the poll. Oh, go ahead, Molly.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, looks like on the poll, everybody said all of the above for the most part, which is absolutely correct.
Yeah, so yeah, in the next section here, we just wanted to share kind of things we've learned. So both, for the good and for the bad, and hopefully helps you as you're going through the journey of deciding, if and when and how you're going to take on regenerative ag. So we wanted to share, over the last 10 years, all the different aspects of building the program. So when we started in 2016, we were really doing it on our own to build this in-house supply chain traceability program. AnchorTRACE, but as we got further and further into it, realized some significant benefits of finding the right partners to work with. As Allison mentioned, we started working with Pet Sustainability Coalition in 2022, who have been great resources on a variety of topics, and also getting more connected with a network of other sustainability professionals. We've also done quite a bit of work with supplier leadership on climate transition, SLOCT group, which I think Alexander is going to provide a link to as well. But this organization is one that helps educate suppliers about it's kind of a sequential course about calculating what your emissions are, what are your options for reducing emissions, putting together an abatement strategy, all sorts of things. So really great working with them. And then we started the regen programs on our own, but again pretty soon after incorporated the third-party verification aspect of it through our work with Regrow Ag. And then on the soil health education piece that Shannah was talking about, we do some amount of that in-house, but we've also found value in partnering with third-party educators, Understanding Ag being one of them that we've worked with. So both as Shannah and I looked back through this on the 10 years, we reflected for a bit to think about what were kind of some of our takeaways. So from the program management side, as I was putting my list together, I realized they all centered on time. So I think that putting these programs together is an invaluable investment in time in a couple different ways. So first would be that, it requires a substantial amount of time from all the parties involved. If, finding your growers, meeting with them, education, getting the growers to put data in and all the, setup and report outcome, building reports, just it requires time. You need to be willing to put the time in. And then I had mentioned earlier timing of contracts, getting those lined up. And my third one was that, physically changes to the soil health, it takes time to happen. So especially when our growers are utilizing 3, 4, maybe 5-year crop rotation cycles, that we need to be watching those changes over an extended period of time. Which can be hard to wait for sometimes. But and then the last one is that even though, if it might feel like a lot of time invested, that the kind of the relationship side of it, of the outcomes, I mean, are just really invaluable. Like we have found so many more opportunities in talking to our growers and maybe flexibility on working with things together. Same thing on the customer side that really opens some intangible, some tangible benefits of getting to know each other so much better. So you get both the data output of the outcomes of what's the result of doing the program, as well as that relationship benefit of working together. Now let Shannah talk about more on the grower engagement side, what kind of her experience has been on lessons learned.
Thanks, Molly. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the grower side just because that's the side I work with mostly. The biggest thing we learned grower-wise is that one size does not fit all. So aside from these growers being at very different phases in their regenerative journey, there were also other variables, like Molly had mentioned, like different geographical regions. In some areas, guys can or cannot use certain regenerative practices. And there's some areas where guys just can't grow certain crops. So initially with this program, we approached our growers mostly in like a one-on-one or a small group setting, a grower meeting. And the responses we got were very mixed on these programs. There's definitely skepticism. When you think about it, a lot of these guys have been farming the same way for many years, and you're asking them to change. There was a bunch of guys that were not only intrigued, but very excited as well that there was new opportunities and new programs available within their space. And then we also had a few growers who were already well down the path of implementation on these regenerative practices, and they actually were able to teach us a thing or two about regenerative farming. Overall, we learned that growers all run their operations very differently, and we've had to make investments in both time and financially to be able to work with them and create successful programs. So, we also needed to learn how to highlight the benefits to our growers. Knowing my growers as well as I do, we had to ensure that there was real value to them and that they were aware of what this value was. Because whether it be one-on-one or at a grower meeting, the first question I would get asked when I introduced these programs were, well, what's in it for me? So at the end of the day, these guys are running a business, and we needed to be able to show them that the benefits of our programs outweighed their costs of change. We did this in two ways. So we broke it down into short-term benefits and long-term benefits. In the short term, these growers are making a little bit more per bushel or a premium more than they would on conventionally grown crops. They also gain some direct access to the brands that they're growing for. I know talking with some of my growers, they think it's really neat that they can point out a specific bag of pet food and tell others that their regenerative crop is being utilized in this product. And then in the long term, we knew it was important that they understood how shifting their approach today would result in long-term benefits for their operations. Overall, their focus on regenerative agricultural practices can increase profitability on their farms. Not only are they making more per bushel in the short term, but they're also growing healthier crops. And on top of that, they're actually reducing their input costs, whether that's reduction in synthetic fertilizer use, not disturbing the soil, among other things that can result in improved soil health and the long-term viability of their ground, because they're going to be passing this ground to future generations. So overall today, or working with these growers, we learned that being able to highlight the benefits and working directly with the growers was an absolutely crucial step in building these programs in the first place, because regenerative farming has to start at the farm and with the growers. So that is all I have, but we appreciate all of you guys joining us today. You're more than welcome to connect with us to talk about our programs further, and ask any questions that you might have.
Yay! I'm just applauding on behalf of the whole audience. Um, wow. Thank you both so much. I just want to repeat a few of my favorite things that I heard you say. Um, Shannah, at what point you said healthy soil is at the heart of every regenerative agriculture program. And then that connects to something that you said, Molly. You said that you can't influence changes in the soil health without knowing who to go talk to about it. But then, Shannah, again, you said that like who you're talking to about it might come at it with a different level of understanding or acceptance. So I think that like both of you did a great job of saying like a brand might have these objectives, but then like what needs to happen so that that is a collaboration, a true collaboration with the growers. I just had this adorable image pop into my head of like a grower and a brand owner are both like in a pet store holding the same bag of food, and they're just both so excited about the other one's contribution. Like the grower, you said, is like excited to be able to point to that bag knowing that their crop is in it, but then the brand is probably equally excited to know that like it came from this grower. So I'm just excited by that image.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So for our audience, please use the Q&A function if you would like to ask a question of Molly and Shannah. And I have a few to start off with. One thing, so I want to talk about like the decision to collaborate with an existing supplier or switch. So for a brand maybe looking to transition to regenerative sourcing, what are the key factors to consider when they're deciding between collaborating on the transition with an existing supplier or to switch to a new supplier who's already practicing the regenerative methods?
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, to me, the first question would be which, based on those objectives you said at the beginning, of which recipe or commodity are you trying to influence? And so that might be a real easy, like, divisive point of like, you need a supplier who's, procuring those type of ingredients for you. And then I guess another question would be based on the volume of that commodity that goes into that recipe. Can the supplier, or the couple suppliers that you're looking at, can they support that, that volume? And again, this is related to that. Does it need to be identity preserve versus a mass balance approach? But I think that's probably those two things would be where I would start. I guess a third one would be, from the brand seed of like how much financial investment are you willing to commit to the program? Because starting with a supplier who doesn't already do this, like it takes a bit to get it started versus, someone who's got one up and running.
Cool. Shannah, did you have anything to add to that one?
I don't think so. I mean, as Molly said, I mean, these programs take a long time to build in our
Mhm.
experience. So it depends on their objective. If they want product, in the nearby, maybe it does make sense to, partner with an existing supplier that has these programs in place. Otherwise, if it's something you're looking to build out, just know that it's going to take time.
Awesome. Could you define for us the difference between identity preserved and mass balance?
Sure. Yep. So identity preserved means that from the moment we take the product, the field run product off the farm, all the way through, bulk storage, processing, finished product into, a lot of our product is delivered in bulk format, that it's physically segregated, that these, this barley or oats or flax is in its own bins from our, kind of quote unquote conventional product. Whereas mass balance might be if you design your program to say, your objective is that, I guess an example would be like 30% of our oats were grown using healthy soil practices. Then it could be, either with that one supplier that it needs to, 30% of that needs to be within this program, or if, 100% from the regen program can be mixed with the other 70% from a from more of a conventional source. But
Gotcha.
the IP piece of it brings on logistical challenges that I would say was one other learning we had, that both, at our own facilities, we need to be able to accommodate that, which we've figured out ways to do. But then if the brand is using either a co-man or at their own facility, like those facilities also need to be able to accommodate that, whether it's in, bulk bins or totes or trailers or whatever mechanism they end up using.
Cool. Actually, there's an audience question here that may relate to that. What role can aggregators and transportation companies play?
In Regen Ag programs. The aggregator piece, I'm guessing they're meaning maybe like a broker or distributor. I think really being willing to dig in on the data side of it, because that's when I mentioned the, supply chain complexity can make traceability really challenging to do. That's where, like, if a brand's buying from, let's say, a commercial elevator or a distributor or broker of some kind, you kind of can hit a wall there. But if that aggregator is willing to say, yep, I'll go either do surveys or, share through whatever traceability I have in my own system, that really helps it flow all the way through. On transportation, we don't focus on that within our regenerative agriculture program. That's something we address through just our corporate sustainability program of trying to find, more efficient routes, or can we, transport on truck versus or rail versus truck, or different mechanisms we're trying on transportation.
Cool. I wanted to ask too, so our webinar today focused on crops. How do the principles of regenerative agriculture apply to animal protein production as well? And does the same system and set of benefits apply?
Right. Yeah. So at Anchor, we handle both. Like I said, we handle a wide array of ingredients, including animal proteins. And the first couple of years of our program, we were exclusively focused on crops. Last year, we were getting more and more feedback from our customers that the animal protein ingredient is such a large component of their recipes that they needed to find ways to influence that as well. So in the work that we've done so far, we've found that the kind of growing practices that we talked about today weren't either as applicable or of as much interest to the brands, including like the focus on carbon, which we see a lot with the crop side of things. What they're looking for more seems to be animal welfare related behaviors and policies and practices. And so, we're kind of in the midst of finding ways to incorporate those within our program, which, might sit kind of separate from the what we've dubbed, Regen Ag programs.
Cool. Shannah, did you have anything to add about the animal protein side of things?
No, I think Molly got us covered there.
Crushing it. Okay, so we definitely have a theme of questions I'm seeing in the audience chat. There's an interest in the end consumer, so perception of pet owners, about how they're reacting to regenerative claims. Do you have anything to say about that? So maybe like the effect of certifications, or if there's a certain way of communicating about this practice that resonates with pet owners?
Right. We've talked a lot about this with our customers, and so this is sort of, since we're a supplier to brands, we don't work with the consumers directly. It's sort of third party, hearing this, but that in some aspects, the end consumers seem a bit confused by some of the terminology of regenerative or soil health, or the different practices, and like just the definitions. That's kind of why we asked that question at the beginning, was the people understanding of what that means. We've definitely had a handful of customers ask about certifications that mainly they're asking if we support those, not necessarily that they, have selected one and they want to be able to put that certification on their bag or things like that. So in our view, the certification landscape is still kind of a unsettled territory where there's not one defined leader. And so while we've investigated multiple opportunities with certifications, at this time we haven't elected to pursue one of them, which is kind of in line with the feedback we're getting from customers.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, it's like your system is kind of agnostic to any one certification. It could give the brand the flexibility to choose one, but it's not integrated into a requirement on your end.
Yeah, we don't require one. We don't issue a one of the third-party certifications other than like the third-party data validation. They're certifying the data of what we're producing here. But yeah, if a customer came and said they have one, one that they needed to use, we'd be willing to be flexible and work with them. But it's just at this point, there's not like that one clear like the certified organic butterfly that like so many consumers recognize right out, on the shelf. So we'd like to see a little more development on that front on certifications.
But meanwhile, the actual practices that is contributing to healthy soil can continue to happen.
Of course, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Doesn't
Absolutely.
need to have another certifying body necessarily.
great. Also, just because I know that some brands are in the audience, if you are a brand and you have an answer to that question about how your consumers are reacting to regenerative, I invite you to put that in the chat too, because we can learn from each other in this environment as well. So a few questions are asking about carbon. And so I think the way I would like to pose this is just about trade-offs. So I think there is some data that shows that regenerative agriculture can lead to carbon sequestration. But
Mhm.
what about benefits or potentially negative trade-offs across the entire spectrum of environmental metrics? So like, are there known trade-offs between land use or habitat and emissions, labor conditions, that kind of thing?
Sure. Shannon, you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about trade-offs, I think one thing, just working directly with my growers in regenerative agriculture, is a lot of my growers are not only worried about, you know, right on their growing field where they're growing this regenerative product, but they also have this trade-off of if they put a cover crop in, they're introducing more wildlife into their fields, they're introducing more habitat into their fields. So I think there is a positive trade-off there where, outside of just the carbon sequestration and emissions, I mean, they're seeing just honestly overall healthier land because they're bringing in more wildlife onto their land at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Um, Molly, did you want to add anything to that one?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Just in case this is relevant, do you have anything to say about packaging? Does the packaging fit into a regenerative story, or is that a totally separate decision a brand needs to make?
I would say in general, we see it as separate. Like I mentioned a little bit that most of the product, off the farm ends up being delivered to brands in bulk format. So it's in a bulk trailer. Occasionally there's, totes involved, but to a much lesser extent. So yeah, at this point, we haven't pursued the, recycling packaging aspect just because it's such a small percentage of the output.
Okay. I'll read this next question. So it says, in the UK, organic is defined by law, but in the US, regenerative really isn't defined.
Mhm.
It's more described as a set of goals. So do you think it would be helpful to have a general regenerative standard that everyone abides to?
I
Um,
I can maybe take this one, Molly, if you want.
yeah, yep,
Um, I think, potentially, and there are, as you guys had mentioned, some programs that are coming out for, certified regenerative. Um, but the one thing that me and Molly have learned, and I maybe touched on it, was regenerative agriculture does not look the same depending
no.
on where you're farming. So if I would go out to my guys in Montana who deal with drought and, drier weather almost every year and try and tell them like you need to put a cover crop in, well, they're going to tell me like I have no water to grow that cover crop. Whereas in the Midwest, where there's plenty of moisture and they're looking to, take some of that moisture out of the soil, um, they're going to be all for it. So at the end of the day, I mean, I think there's maybe some outlines or guidelines you could give, but it would be very difficult, I think, to give like here's the standards for regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, my like immediate gut response on that was like, yes, absolutely. Then, there's just very clear rules and how we run programs and how brands talk about it to consumers would make things just like so much simpler. But then my hesitation was exactly what Shanna explained that, you can't set up one set of rules that will work for the, the whole country or the whole world. So I think one certification that we've debated about, I think did a really nice job of defining like, here's a set of practices that are considered regenerative, and to be considered certified in their program, you need to take on a certain number of them, and then you need to show like over time that you are, taking on more of them and or expanding it across a larger portion of your operations. And I thought that one did a really nice job of recognizing that, like, yep, there's common practices, but there need to be adjustments, and and also just from year to year, depending on, precipitation is a big one, that's going to change how you farm that same field from year to year.
Right.
Absolutely.
This is where my little ecology background is coming in, that it's like the land is so different with like
Mhm.
micro ecosystems and just like different interactions between like microbes and all this. So it's like I'm kind of on team one standard, just couldn't even come close to capturing what needs to happen. So some
Mhm.
flexibility for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one last question before I kind of let you leave the audience with your final thoughts. But so my last question is, could you provide a little bit more detail on that supplier leadership on climate transition program that you mentioned? The supplier locked is the acronym.
That's what
Um,
they call it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
just like
absolutely.
your
Yeah, be
experience of
happy.
doing it.
Right. Yeah, we've had nothing but positive experience. It's a consultancy group out of DC that runs it, and so very well structured. I think it's like 5 courses that you go through. And to me, this is really a value both to a supplier and to a brand. So if you're in the brand seat and you're trying to decide, am I ready to, regen egg programs would be one way to take on, a portion of your sustainability aspirations. If you're not quite there yet, I would say the supplier lock program is a great way to start engaging your suppliers upstream, because the way they have it structured is that a brand sponsors one or more of their suppliers to participate in this program, and they start by teaching them, how to calculate your own emissions inventory, and then how can you implement reductions, how do you set an abatement strategy, how do you report on it. It just walks you holds your hand the whole way through of explaining how to go through that process. So I think it's a great option for the brands to start working with their suppliers, and then also sitting in a supplier seat, just a fabulous resource to help educate your team if you don't already have like a robust carbon accounting team or a sustainability team. So yeah, I think you can share the link out in the chat to their group, but I'm sure they'd love to hear from
Cool.
anybody on this call.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a phenomenon that I observe many times, is that like the brand is typically the company that's asking for this data that like wants that has a decarbonization goal, and they're like, "Hey, suppliers, give me
Mhm.
all this data." And the suppliers are like, what is scope one?"
Yeah, a lot of them don't know where to start. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is normal. So it's a really natural collaboration, and I'm really glad that there's an organization supporting it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you both so much. So in our last minutes, I'll just ask you each, what do you want to leave the audience with? Final thoughts. Shanna, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, this has been such a cool journey, and me and Molly, I think, have worked a lot on this together. Final thoughts have been like it is a lot of work, but I think at the end of the day, it's been worth it, especially here in Anchor. I mean, I think it's been a process that I've surely learned a lot. Just learning about working with growers, working on the soil health side. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it's been worth it.
Awesome. And
Yeah,
Molly?
for me, I would say one of our big learnings was at the beginning doing our emissions inventory for the first time. Learned, as I'm sure a lot of folks on the call have done as well, is that within your scope 3 category, purchased goods and services are like almost always the biggest portion of that. And so for whether you're a pet food manufacturer or you're human food, or just so many of them, going back to the farm is just the most logical place to start. So for us, it was a no-brainer. This had to be a big focus for us. And I think a lot of folks in the audience will probably have similar sentiments that this is a very logical place to start, and accessible if you can either have that relationship with your growers or find someone who can help you do that.
Awesome. And one of my takeaways too, what the thought that's sticking with me is just this notion that you can't really have a conversation about regenerative agriculture without that conversation being about the growers.
Right. Has to start
So
there.
Thank you both so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Thank you to the audience for asking awesome questions and participating and giving us reactions. I'm seeing a lot of little emoji applause happening. So this has been really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you so much.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye.